man lying on a cot. They took him alive, thank God. Other terrorists were surrendering, their hands held high. Then more rapid gunshots, off camera this time. A suspect was marched down the hall with a gun held to his head. An older man. The wolf? Was it possible they had captured him? The policeman with the gun was smiling as if he had scored something big. The raid was certainly fast and efficient. At least 4 of the terrorists had been captured alive. Then we waited impatiently for news. The cameras at the raid site were shut down. We waited some more. Finally, about 3 in the afternoon, an army colonel stood at the front of the room in the crisis center. Every seat was taken. There was no more standing room. The tension was almost unbearable. The colonel began. "We have identified the prisoners, those who are alive. 1 from Iran, a Saudi, a Moroccan, 2 Egyptians. A cell. Al-Qaeda. We know who they are. It is doubtful that we caught the wolf. It is also doubtful that these terrorists were involved in the threat to Paris. I am sorry to give you bad news at this late hour. We did our best, but he remains a step ahead of us. I am sorry." Chapter 87. The terrible final deadline was so close now, and no one had any more information on what would happen next. We seemed to have run out of options to stop the wolf. At 5:45, I was one of several nervous men and women climbing out of dark Renaults and then hurrying toward the tall ironwork gates of the Ministère de l'Intérieur building for a meeting with the DGSE, which is the French equivalent of our CIA. The front gates were immense. Like supplicants entering a cathedral, we seemed small and insignificant as we passed through them. I felt small and insignificant, as well as at the mercy of higher powers, and not just God. The gates opened onto a grand courtyard, a vast expanse of cobblestones, and I was reminded of the horse-drawn carriages that had once rolled through these very gates. Had there been progress in the world since then? It didn't seem like it on that particular day. I walked with other police officers, government ministers, and directors into a magnificent entry hall with a marbled pink and white tile floor. Armed guards lined the staircase. Hardly anyone spoke on the way up. There was only the dull sound of our plodding footsteps, the occasional nervous cough. It was possible that within the hour, Paris, London, Washington, and Tel Aviv would be bombed, and thousands would die. There could be a much higher number of casualties. 100,000 or more was a possibility. A Russian gangster is doing this? One with mysterious ties to Al-Qaeda? We're at his mercy now, aren't we? How incredibly strange. The meeting was in the Salle des Fêtes, and once again I couldn't help wondering what I was doing there. I was the American representative in Paris because the FBI wanted me there, because there was a chance that I could make a difference with my experience as a psychologist and homicide detective, because something tragic might have happened to the wolf in Paris a long time ago. We still hadn't figured out what. Inside the main hall, tables had been arranged in a U-shape and covered with plain white fabric. Propped on easels were laminated maps of Europe, the Middle East, and the United States. The target areas were circled in thick red crayon. Crude, but effective. A dozen or more TV monitors were up and running. So was a state-of-the-art teleconferencing system. There were more gray and blue suits than usual, more important people, more obvious power on display. For some reason, I noticed several pairs of rimless titanium eyeglasses. The ever-fashionable French. Live scenes from London, Washington, Paris, and Tel Aviv played on the TV monitors mounted on the walls. The cities were quiet. Most of the army and police were inside as well. Etienne Marteau came and sat beside me. Martin Lodge had already returned to London. What do you think our chances are, realistically, here in Paris, Alex? Etienne asked. Etienne, I don't know what's happening. No one does. Maybe we stopped the main cell of terrorists earlier. My guess is that everything has been leading up to today's deadline. I think the Wolf knew how difficult it would be to pull this together. Something happened to him here in Paris. We still don't know what it is. What can I say? We're out of time. We're fucked. Suddenly, Etienne sat up straight in his chair. My God! It's President Dubonnet. Chapter 88. Aramis Dubonnet, the French president, looked to be in his mid-50s and was very well dressed for the occasion, very formal. He was a compact man with slicked-back silver-gray hair and a pencil-thin mustache, and he wore wire-rimmed eyeglasses. He looked somewhat calm and in control of his emotions as he strode quickly to the front of the room and began to talk. You could hear a pin drop.
As you know, I have worked in the trenches and on the front lines of law enforcement for many years myself. So I wanted you to hear from me now. I also wanted to be with you for these final minutes before the deadline runs out. I have news. The money has been raised. In Paris, in London, Washington, and in Tel Aviv, with help from many friends of Israel around the world. The entire sum will be transferred in 3.5 minutes, approximately 5 minutes before the deadline expires. I want to thank everyone in this room and all of those you represent for countless hours of hard work, for personal sacrifices that no one should ask, for the most heroic effort, incredible bravery by so many. We did the best that we could, and most important, we will survive this crisis. Eventually, we will get these inhuman bastards, all of them. We will get this wolf, the most inhuman of them all.
There was a gold Empire clock on the wall behind the president. Everyone watched it intently. How could we not? At 5:55 Paris time, President Dubonnet said,
The money is being transferred now. It will happen in a matter of seconds. All right. It's done. This should be over now. We will be all right. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
There was an audible sigh of relief in the cavernous room. Smiles and handshakes, some hugs. Then we waited. Almost a reflex action. For any kind of communication from the wolf. For breaking news from the other targeted cities. Washington, London, Tel Aviv. The final 60 seconds before the deadline were incredibly tense and dramatic, even though the ransom had been delivered. I could do nothing but watch the second hand on the clock. Finally, I said a prayer for my family, for the people in all 4 cities, for the world we live in. Then it was 6 in Paris and London, 12 in Washington, 7 in Tel Aviv. The deadline had passed. But what did it mean? Were we truly safe? There were no significant changes on any of the monitors. No disruptions, no explosions on the live video feeds, nothing. And there was no call from the wolf. 2 more minutes passed. 10 minutes. And then a terrible explosion rocked the room and the world. Part 5. Deliver us from evil. Chapter 89. The bomb, or bombs, not nuclear, but powerful enough to cause massive damage, went off in the 1st arrondissement, near the Louvre. The entire area, a maze of lanes and dead-end streets, was nearly flattened. Close to 1,000 people died immediately, or at least within a few seconds. The terrible multiple explosions were heard and felt all over Paris. The Louvre suffered only minor damage from the blasts, but the three-block area covering Rue de Marengo, Rue de l'Oratoire, and Rue Bailleul was almost completely destroyed, as was a nearby bridge, a small one, crossing the Seine. A bridge. Another bridge. In Paris this time. Not a word of explanation was heard from the wolf. He didn't take credit for the wanton and despicable act, nor did he deny it. He didn't need to explain his actions, did he? He thought he was God. There are other supremely arrogant people who labor inside our government in Washington, and also some who work in the national media, who believe that they can accurately predict what will happen in the future because they know, or think they know, what happened in the past. I suspect it's the same in Paris, London, Tel Aviv, and everywhere else in the world. All these basically intelligent, maybe even well-intentioned people who proclaim, "That couldn't happen," or "Here's how it would happen in the real world," as if they really know. But they don't know. Nobody knows. All bets are off nowadays. Anything can happen, and sooner or later it probably will. We don't seem to be getting any smarter as a species, just crazier and crazier. Or at the very least, a whole lot more dangerous. Unbelievably, unbearably more dangerous. Or maybe that was just my mood as I flew back from Paris. A terrible, terrible tragedy had occurred there after all. The wolf had won, if what he did could be called winning, and it hadn't even been a close contest. A power-mad Russian gangster had adopted the tactics of terrorism, or so it seemed. He was better than we were, more organized, more cunning, and far more brutal when he needed results. I couldn't even remember the last time we'd had a victory in our battle with the wolf and his forces. He was smarter. I just prayed that it was over now. Could it be? Or was it another calm before another storm? I couldn't bear to think about that possibility. I arrived home a little before 3 on a Thursday afternoon. The kids were back. Nana had never left 5th Street. When I got there, I insisted on cooking dinner. Wouldn't take no for an answer. It was what I needed. Cook a good meal, talk to Nana and the kids about anything we wanted to talk about, get lots of hugs. Not have a single thought about what had happened in Paris, or the wolf, or any kind of police work. So I made my interpretation of a French-style dinner, and I even spoke French with Damon and Janny while the meal was being prepared. Janny set the dining table with Nana's silver, cloth napkins, a lace tablecloth that we used only for special occasions. The meal? Langoustin, rôti, brunoise, de papaye, poivron, et cignon doux. Prawns with papaya, peppers, and onions. For a main course, chicken stew and a sweet red wine sauce. We drank small glasses of wine with the meal, a delightful minervois, and ate with enthusiasm. But for dessert, brownies and ice cream. I was back in America, after all. I was home. Thank God. Chapter 90. Home again, home again. The next day I didn't go to work, and the kids stayed out of school. It seemed to satisfy everybody's needs, even Nana Mama's, who encouraged us all to play hooky. I called Jamila a couple of times, and talking to her helped, as it always did. But something seemed off between us. For our day of hooky playing, I took the kids on a day trip to St. Michael's, Maryland, which is situated on Chesapeake Bay. The village turned out to be a lively snapshot of quaint coastal charm, a thriving marina, a couple of small inns with rockers set out on the porches, even a lighthouse. And the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum, where we got to watch real shipwrights working on a skipjack restoration. It felt as though we were back in the 19th century, which didn't seem like such a bad idea. After lunch at the Crab Claw restaurant, we embarked on an actual skipjack charter. Nana Mama had taken her school classes there many times over the years,